I'm a big fan of Tudor. If you've watched my previous videos, I've even owned one and absolutely loved it. But the brand has a problem. There's a big part of their market that they're completely ignoring. I'm certain they're aware of it, but there is one watch that should be in their lineup, and they refuse to make it, much to my dismay. So, I took matters into my own hands. Welcome to Addicted to Watches. Today, we're not looking at a watch so much as we're listening to a story. Before you click away, don't worry, there is a watch at the end of it we'll be looking at. We're just going on a little journey to get there. So grab your favorite beverage and settle in. We're going way back in time to 2016-2017. Tudor are well and truly back on the map after releasing their Black Bay dive watch, and they're sitting in their grand boardroom thinking, how can we follow that up? Then, inspiration strikes. Let's remove the bezel. And thus, the Black Bay 36 was born, soon to be followed by the 41 version. In my opinion, this is one of their best watches, and of course I really like it. The snowflake hand is a little contentious, but I'm a fan. It's sporty enough to be sporty, and dressy enough to be dressy. It is more or less the epitome of an everyday watch. Simple, solid, subtle. So, like any reasonable person, I went down to my local shop and tried them on. First, I was handed the 41. Before I even put it on, I thought it was going to be too big. Slab sides and a wide diameter can only mean it will wear big, and boy did it. I've got a 7-inch wrist, but even with that, the lug stuck out over my wrist and didn't sit well. It felt like I had a plate on my wrist. No problem, I hear Tudor say. If 41 is too big, we've got you covered. Try this 36 on for size. Going into all this, I had already thought that the 36 would be a good size for me. After all, the date day I had was a 36 and fit like a glove. But if that fit like a glove, the Black Bay 36 fit like a sock. It didn't feel right either, and was so small it felt lost on my wrist. So, of course, that day I left the boutique empty-handed, but with my wallet intact. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. Fast forward to last year, however, and Tudor come out with the Black Bay Steel and Gold collection, or S&G. These watches are basically blinged up versions of the 36 and 41 we've been talking about, with gold bezels, crowns, and parts of the bracelet. They are also available in gilt dials, whereas the regular are black dialed with white printing and silver hands. But there is something you'll notice about this lineup from Tudor. They have mysteriously filled in a little gap that exists in their regular lineup. If we look at the sizes, we have 31, 36, 39, and 41. Did you notice it? Of course you did, we all did. I know it, you know it, even Tudor knows it. They added 39, and yet they don't offer the all-steel version in this case size. It really is a case of Goldilocks and being just right. How do I know? I tried them all on. Nothing changed from last time. The 41 was too big. The 36 was too small. The 39? Just right. When I was trying them on, I was talking with the staff, and he also mentioned that there are a lot of other people coming in who would ideally want a 39 in steel, but unfortunately it's not offered. I think for most of them they probably end up going bigger and getting the 41. So why Tudor? Why don't you offer it? Talking with a friend, they suggested that it would cut into the market share of the Ranger, since it's already 39mm, and from one perspective I can understand that. They want the Ranger to have more than one USP in their lineup. But, at the same time, it is very tool focused, whereas the Black Bay is much sportier and much dressier. I really don't think they'd be both competing for the same customers. Fast forward again to today, and like many people, I find myself browsing the internet with no goal in particular. I wind up looking at watch mod parts and materials. I see a Seiko NH35 movement on sale, and that gets the gears turning. If Tudor won't make a Black Bay 39, maybe I should make my own. So, I set about searching, and it was easy enough finding a dial and hands in a matching style. Then, there was just the case. Most of the cases I saw were all polished and not right for what I wanted, but eventually I found a case that fit the bill. 39mm, polished bezel, brushed lugs. Then it was just a 3-week wait until my parts were shipped and delivered. Once they arrived, I didn't sleep and didn't eat until I had completed my watch. Partly because I was so excited, and partly because it only took 45 minutes. And here is the result. I have to admit, it's not perfect, but it's about as close as I'll get for at least a very long time, and probably ever, to the watch that I want from Tudor. I also decided to go gilt for the dial and hands rather than silver to differentiate it a little bit more as well. The case looks like it's been modelled after some other famous cases made by Tudor's big brother, and it's a little chunkier than I would have preferred. I like the narrower lugs and thinner bezel of some of the more vintage styled cases, but that was not really available in this 39mm size to fit with the standard Seiko sized 28.5mm dials. The other thing I'm not as keen on is the proportion of the dial markers. The ones on the 36 are bigger in proportion to the rest of the dial, and I actually really like that. The ones on mine here are more like the 41, and there is more negative space on the dial. It's not bad by any means, but if I had my way, the markers would be a little bit bigger. Something that surprised me is that I much prefer this watch on a NATO strap rather than the original bracelet. That's strange because usually I prefer the bracelet on a watch. I think that's because of the taper on the bracelet, which makes the head of the watch feel much bigger, whereas this NATO strap balances it out a little better because it doesn't taper at all. The other detail to note about this watch is that it has a date unlike the original. I could take it or leave it, to be honest with you, but for this watch I specifically chose the movement with a black date wheel so that it was color matched to the dial. In many of my other videos, I have said that I actually prefer a white date wheel on some dials because it balances out the marker at 9. I wanted to put that to the test and put my money where my mouth is with this watch, and I can safely say that yes, I was right. With a black date wheel here, the dial just feels out of balance, like the 3 o'clock marker is missing, whereas a white date wheel wouldn't give me that feeling. So, next time someone tells you that the date wheel needs to be color matched to the dial, think about whether it really does. And so, we come to the end of my story. Maybe not the most exciting story you'll hear today, but one that's been years in the making for me. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Just kidding, I haven't even shown you how it wears. I'll show you on the bracelet first, since that's the original strap for this case, and hopefully you can see what I mean about it making the head feel large because of that taper. I don't mind it too much, but as you'll soon see, it looks much better on a NATO strap. I've been wearing this one with the over-under technique to make it a bit thinner on wrist, and it's quite comfortable like that. It keeps it flat on my wrist and stops the lugs from lifting away even as I turn my wrist. Those lugs don't turn down a lot, so that's important. Finally, we have this brown leather strap, which also looks great on this watch. The gold hints of colour on the dial really get picked out nicely by the colour of the strap and the vintage style. Okay, now that's the end of my story. Really this time. This was my first proper build of a watch like this. I've done a bit of modding, swapping dials and hands on a Seiko 5, but not to this extent before. It was definitely a fun experience, and maybe I'll do it again sometime soon. What do you think about my story, my watch, and Tudor? I wanted to get this video out ahead of the upcoming Watches and Wonders event, just in case Tudor decided to prove me a liar and actually release the 39 in all steel. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.